the South African Football Association has announced Hugo Broos as the new Bafana coach. The Belgian coach will succeed Molefi Ntseki, who was sacked after failing to qualify for the 2021 AFCON in Cameroon. For more on the story, I'm joined in the studio by Benjamin Leshuru, our sports anchor. Benjamin, good to have you with us once again. We've been waiting for this moment. You actually announced it on air earlier on this morning as you were reading the press release on your phone about an announcement that was to be made at 1 p.m. The results to be expected or not?
Look, you know, what just happened, Tammy, the way this media briefing went about is an exact mirror of how SAFA has handled this process throughout, since the sacking of Molefi Ntseki. Calamity all over.
Well, for those who perhaps are coming in late into the game and are not quite understanding the context around which we're talking, tell us about this circumstances of the announcement. Well,
first of all, Hugo Broos was by no stretch of imagination SAFA's #1 choice for coach of Bafana Bafana. Danny Jordan might be saying that there were no talks that had collapsed and this is the only coach that was picked. That's not true. This is him being disingenuous, because we know that there were talks with Carlos Queiroz that collapsed. He was set to be named the coach a while ago, and that didn't happen. And there were talks with McCarthy. There were talks with McCarthy. In fact, Sandile Zungu, the president of AmaZulu, will be holding a media briefing tomorrow just to, I guess, settle the dust and bring everyone into being calm around the situation and say, this is what's happening. The coach is staying with his technical team. And Benny, the only reason Benny was not appointed at SAFA is because he had his demands that SAFA refused to yield into, and this included having Munib Josephs as his goalkeeper coach, Siyabonga Nomvete as his assistant, those gentlemen that he's working with at AmaZulu, that a combination that's working for him, and his former teammates in the national team as well. So SAFA did not take kindly to Benny's demands, and this is the only reason Hugo Broos, SAFA have had to settle. They've settled for Hugo Broos, and I know he is an AFCON winner. He won it with Cameroon in 2017 against all odds, but he is by no stretch of imagination, as I said, the #1 choice for coach for SAFA. It was a panic move because the World Cup qualifiers are coming. Danny, as a former vice president of CAF, said the thinking is that the qualifiers will be moved to September by CAF, but the thinking originally was that they're going to be in, or they were slated to be in June. But it was a panic appointment by SAFA because they were running out of time.
Panic appointment, as you call it, though it may be. Talk us through, however, the credentials that Broos does have. He is by no means a novice. He has a lot of accolades under his belt. Yeah,
he's had a long coaching career. Started back in the 80s in his native Belgium, and he's coached big clubs there, the likes of Club Brugge, as we see there on screen. He's coached Anderlecht and Genk. Those are big clubs out in Belgium. And I suppose his biggest assignment on the continent, and why a lot of Africans know him, is that stint in Cameroon from 2016 to 17, where he guided them to Nations Cup glory. That is why Hugo Broos is considered even a choice, even a candidate for any job on the continent. And interestingly enough, I found out today that Hugo was set to be named as DRC coach later this afternoon. He was set to be named as the coach of the DRC, but made a U-turn at the last moment after having an agreement with SAFA, and will obviously now be coming to South Africa.
And talking about U-turns, yes, you did mention that Benny McCarthy had a set of requirements that SAFA could not meet, because this past weekend, Benny McCarthy is the one who seemed to be flying the flag, at least as far as the media was concerned. Was that just pure speculation? And, you know, there is the saying that there's no smoke without fire. So if the smoke was Benny McCarthy being the next Bafana Bafana coach, where was the fire for that smoke?
Look, it wasn't just pure speculation. SAFA CEO Tebogo Motlanthe flew to Cape Town. Football fans will know that AmaZulu beat Cape Town City 5-1 last week. After that game, Benny had a meeting with SAFA CEO Tebogo Motlanthe in Cape Town. He flew there. I had a chat with Motlanthe, and he told me that he's flying to Cape Town, and I've got it on good authority that it was to meet Benny McCarthy. And Sandile Zungu, the president of AmaZulu, made it clear that Benny is not for sale, so to speak, and he will not be leaving. But SAFA also still had to convince Zungu. They had to buy him out. He had a hefty buyout clause in his contract at AmaZulu. So there was a lot of things besides the demands that Benny was coming with. And he was also not coming cheap. I mean, Benny McCarthy is South Africa's most celebrated footballer, arguably the country's best export to Europe, the leading goal scorer of all time for South Africa, the only one with a Champions League medal. And he was a fan favorite to get the job. And it wasn't just the fans or the media. The association was speaking to him. That deal, I have no doubt, collapsed probably in the last 48 hours or so.
What is it going to take to ensure that the Belgian Broos is actually acclimatized to South Africa's players, South Africa's environment, and just the way that we play?
That's an interesting question, because there was a question from one of the gentlemen of the media in that briefing. How are you going to put together your technical team? Because now you find yourself in a situation where you don't know South African players. You have to rely on those who are here, perhaps local coaches who can say, okay, pick that one, because he's in a race against time. He doesn't have, the season is just about to end. There's about 5 or 4 games left in the season. He doesn't have enough time to look at South African players. So how's he going to know which players are best to pick? So he's going to have to rely on maybe local coaches, have meetings with some of the PSL coaches, senior clubs, maybe talk to them and see what is happening in South African football. But importantly, there's a tendency by European coaches to be coaching African nations, to be the head coaches of African nations, but still stay in Europe. A bad tendency that they have. There's been incidents like that in some African countries. I don't know if it's the conditions that they just not in favor of. But if you'd think if someone is appointed in a position somewhere, they'd move there and not want to stay in another country while working in another. So I'm hoping that Hugo Broos will not be staying in Belgium. He'll be staying in South Africa and making sure that he attends PSL matches to make sure that he knows these players, because it will be embarrassing for him to only come when the national team is playing. We know it can be a couple of months before the national team has to assemble. And you've got, 2 weeks to put it together before a game. So I hope he does better than most European coaches who come to Africa.
So tomorrow you did say that there is going to be an announcement made by Sandile Zungu. What ought we to be expecting from that announcement, and is it really necessary?
I think for him, it's just to say, okay, calm down. There's nothing to see here. Benny's not going anywhere. And perhaps even cement Benny's ties with the club for some time to come.
Because Benny's performance with the club, what AmaZulu has done in the recent past,
brilliant.
is really nothing short of spectacular.
Spectacular.
And really, it would have been an issue of dismantling what really seems to be a winning formula for AmaZulu.
Yep. And I mean, Benny came in December when AmaZulu was probably towards the relegation spots. And Sandile Zungu said, I want my team to finish in the top 4. Everybody thought he was crazy. And he got Benny, an aggressive footballer in his playing days, and he got the team to mirror that. They play the way he plays. This is why a lot of people wanted Benny to come into the national team. Just this past weekend, AmaZulu soared to the top of the DSTV Premiership table.
interesting thought that comes to mind as we discuss that. When we talk about the caliber of player and caliber of coach that Benny McCarthy is, and the level of confidence that he elicits in his players, and perhaps also the level of support that he will enjoy from South Africa's soccer-loving fraternity. Do you think that a Benny McCarthy-like figure in the Bafana Bafana squad would have had, or has a possibility of having the same effect that it has had on AmaZulu, not only the players, but also even the supporters?
Benny's got the respect of players. That's a definite one. And whether you have your opinions about his coaching methods, whether he's the best coach out there or not, but he's got the aura, he's got the respect.
The Benny effect.
The Benny effect. I mean, everybody knows him, Benny in the 18 area. He's got that. He's got that.
You did not.
He's got that aura, and he walks in, and players immediately trust what he says, because he's won everything that you can win at the highest level of club football. And he's Benny McCarthy. When he walks in as a coach, immediately you've got confidence. Even when you're losing, you look at the bench and you see Benny McCarthy, you've got to do better.
Let's touch base with our reporter now, Minenhle Ehlela, who has been at the briefing a little bit earlier on. The South African Football Association has announced Hugo Broos as the new Bafana Bafana coach. Now, the Belgian will succeed Molefi Ntseki, who was sacked after failing to qualify for the 2021 AFCON in Cameroon. Joining us now is our own reporter, Minenhle Ehlela. Very good afternoon to you, Minenhle. Just a bit of a debrief of the happenings there at Auckland Park this afternoon. Was it a bit of an anti-climax or a jubilation from those who were present on the announcement of the new coach?
Well, Tammy and Ben, you know, the highlight for the last couple of weeks was that the possibility of Benny McCarthy actually taking over. Hugo Broos, if you remember, was in the running for some time, but then somehow he fell off, and it looked like that Benny McCarthy was in the front running this time around. So for some fans who had hoped that it would be Benny McCarthy, an anti-climax indeed, but, you know, SAFA giving their reasons of why they're going with Hugo Broos, a man who's experienced with the African continent in terms of winning the African Cup of Nations, and they wanted somebody who will be able to do exactly the same and ensuring that they also qualify for the FIFA World Cup next year in Qatar, or hopefully we be able to qualify for the FIFA World Cup. And Dr. Danny Jordan, the president of SAFA, said the critical thing about Hugo Broos was that he had such a young team with that Cameroonian team, and he was able to bring in such young blood and able to ensure that the indomitable Lions were able to conquer Africa. Now their plan is to try and do something exactly the same, where Hugo Broos will be able to bring in the youngsters that they have, and he will be able to blood them into the system, and they'll be able to hopefully qualify for the Qatar 2022 World Cup. Danny Jordan mentioned that the biggest component to that operation would be obviously the under-23. And what's happening to the under-23? They're playing in the Tokyo Olympics in a few months' time, and hopefully Hugo Broos will be able to draw in some more players from that squad that he will be able to promote, that will assist him with the qualifying campaign for the 2022 World Cup. So then Danny Jordan's hoping he'll take players from that group of already what he has, the likes of Percy Tau, Lai Fosler, who will come into the mix, and he will be able to produce a team that will be competitive, that will push for the World Cup qualifiers all the way and hopefully be able to qualify. But then on top of that, then we'll start looking at the AFCON in 2023, and obviously the big one will be the World Cup in 2026.
Minenhle Ehlela, thank you very much. That's Minenhle coming to us from Auckland Park, where the new Bafana Bafana coach has been announced. So there you have it, South Africa, your new coach for the foreseeable future. Benjamin there, not really very pleased with that appointment.
Tammy, I can tell you finally that in a couple of years' time we'll be back here.
Well, I certainly hope that you'll be proven wrong, you as well as any of the other skeptics. Bafana Bafana all the way, we certainly hope so. Thank you very much, Benji, as well as to our sports team.